Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubn here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is help versus support. That oftentimes help can actually be a disempowering thing, um, depending, of course, where it's coming from. But it's like, let me help you with that. In other words, I'm more capable, I'm more competent. Let me help you. Let me do it for you. Versus supporting someone in being able to do something for themselves. So, which can be empowering. So that's our conversation for today. And before we get started, let's take, good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. I'm delighted that you're joining us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's here with us. Before we get started on today's conversation, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form through which we experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're talking about help versus support. And this came up multiple times in this week in working with clients. And it's a very interesting thing when so many of us are really compelled to help. And oftentimes that help is like, oh, let me do it for you. And it appears as if it's service to someone else. And maybe in some cases it is, certainly, but there are many cases where it actually can serve to disempower the person that you're helping, by having them feel less capable, less competent. And what I want to do is contrast that with support, and supporting someone to let them know that you're there if they need you, that one is sort of an imposing of assistance versus allowing the other person their autonomy, their um, capabilities and competence. So it like taking on other people's problems to solve them for them is not only can that be disempowering to the other person, but it also is kind of like not recognizing, not respecting your own boundaries. Boundaries is a tricky word, but to allow people to be in their world without having to fix it for them, so to speak. So an example was, there was somebody in a having some difficulty with computer stuff, and they were kind of in a panic, and another person offered to support them, you know, if they needed anything, that they were there. And meantime, this person that offered to support them realized this drama that's unfolding, it's not my drama. And I can offer the support, but I'm not going to jump in as the rescuer. So when we jump in as the rescuer, it really serves to, it can very well serve to disempower the other person versus allowing the other person to initiate a request, you know, rather jumping in to try and save someone. And so it was actually a massive breakthrough for this person that offered the support to just offer the support rather than getting enmeshed in this other drama that took them away from what they needed to be doing, and to just sort of insert themselves in somebody else's drama. And what's really quite valuable, I think, to see in that is that we get to choose the drama that we engage in our own lives and in conjunction with others. In many respects, we get to choose how we relate to that drama, right? Like, are we going to take it on and own it? You know, I feel bad for somebody else, so I'm going to, in a way, come in and rescue, right? Because I know better, or I have more wisdom, or I have more skill, or whatever. I think it's really important for us to know when we can make a difference that empowers rather than weakens another person. And also, is that our lane? Is that where we should be intervening? You know, what is it that's driving that intervention? Is it a savior complex? Is it a sense of, well, I know and you don't kind of thing? Or is it, I'm here if you need me kind of thing, which is a different thing, because it allows that person to have the to exercise the will for support or assistance, right? So anyway, it's a very, very interesting question to know when, or to look at when it's okay to not have to save somebody else, even if they look like they're drowning. Some of us choose to be in those situations or in those emotional states where we are not really receptive to the support, or we're for whatever reason needing some kind of high drama. And it's good, especially for healer people, to be able to know that it's okay not to jump into the fray, that it's not a requirement to try and save somebody else if they're not wanting to be saved, right? If they're not wanting to be helped, if they're not wanting to be supported. I'm not saying turn a cold shoulder. I'm just saying that it's like with someone who's drowning, it's very challenging to save someone who's drowning, because they are in such a panic that they could very readily drown you. So it to save someone who's drowning requires teamwork, and it requires the engagement of the person who's flailing. Also, it requires their engagement, their alignment, their willingness to be helped, if they're flailing about. Maybe the drowning metaphor isn't the most perfect, but I think you can get the idea. So the question is, um, when we see suffering, we can engage in ways that provide support, that acknowledge and honor the other person, rather than swooping in to help in a way that might diminish them. So I think the nuance between the words is just one that we're kind of making up in the moment in a way, but it's the attitude with which we offer help or support. And sometimes the way that we help is not so much an offer as an intervention. It's kind of the conversation of power versus force in a way. The way that so many of us help is almost like force, where there's this dominating kind of energy. It's well intended, but it's like a superior energy, right? Like, I know better. I'm the savior. And in many cases, that's driven by a misdirected sense of ego, versus support. Like, if we say, how can I help? It's very different from saying, let me do it for you. Here, let me do that. Let me take care of that for you. And we also get to look at what is the impact of help versus support that we offer. What's the impact on our lives? And there are situations where we are unlikely to make a difference. And if that's the case, do we have any kind of obligation or responsibility to engage in those kinds of situations? For instance, when someone is creating high drama, or where we can recognize that they need to sort through this themselves, right? I think it's a very, very interesting thing. And so here's another example. This is help versus support. So somebody owes somebody else money, and every time there's a conversation, and a conversation is initiated about that money, it gets to be kind of hairy. It gets to be very tense and confrontational. And when the lack of clarity around the request regarding the reimbursement of the money, lack of clarity in that arena, is coming from a sense of help, like needing to help this person through that dilemma, rather than empowering that person to come up with a solution that is workable. So to be able to, in that situation, support somebody in keeping their commitments, in prioritizing it, in holding someone accountable, is in many cases, of course, depending on how it's done, if it's done lovingly and with clarity and connection, holding someone accountable is a way of supporting them versus trying to help them out because they're in a tough situation and bearing the burden for that person instead. It's a very interesting dynamic that can occur when we enable others. And we enable others often under the guise of helping them. Whereas in fact, it's not really supporting them in their highest expression. It's not really giving them autonomy or honoring their autonomy. Forget about giving it to them. It's not ours to give, right? And that's kind of the notion here is this person needs my help. If we take that kind of attitude, it's often something that disempowers everybody that's involved in the dynamic. So also, when we put ourselves in situations where we are being a savior, we often end up resentful because the person that we're trying to save might not be appreciative of it, or they take advantage of our seeming goodwill. So it gets pretty dicey, pretty hairy, pretty quickly when we're trying to be saviors. Sometimes we need to just let people be in the circumstance that they've created and let them, maybe more than sometimes, let them navigate their way through that. And we can hold their capabilities present so that they're empowered to find a solution, right? Rather than feeling helpless or hopeless. What happens is that we can very easily create this codependent kind of dynamic, right? Where somebody needs to be a savior and somebody needs to be saved. And we just keep perpetuating that. And it tends to ultimately build resentment on both sides. The savior gets resentful of being taken advantage of at some point, and the person who wanted to be saved can feel resentful of the savior because they feel disempowered, they feel powerless. So I think it's an interesting and somewhat challenging path to walk, to be discerning about what's the motivation here for the helping. Is it something that I need for my ego to feel like I'm saving somebody, for example, or that I'm doing good, or is it that I'm being called to do something? I think gaining insight into our deeper motivations can be a very, very powerful thing for us to put attention on. We talk about how we create our own worlds, and we repeat patterns often that are created when we're very young. And we repeat those patterns over and over and over until we find a way to dissolve those foundational programs. And knowing our motivations is something that sheds light on certain dynamics that then would free us potentially to make other choices. Good morning, Isabel. Welcome. How great to have you with us this morning. We're talking about helping versus support, and how there's this often unspoken, depending on where the help is coming from, how there's often this unspoken sense of superiority that comes with helping. Like, I'm helping you because you can't help yourself, versus offering support. And support being something that is more guided by the person that is being supported, ideally, or it's ultimately empowering that person. So tricky stuff because so many of us, especially as healer people, so many of us want to do good. We want to ease other people's pain. We want to feel like we're making a difference. And it's easy to fall into that, the trap of that dynamic of helping that is actually more enabling than helping. I guess that's one of the big distinctions here, is not that helping is bad, but the enabling is something that disempowers rather than empowers the person that we're helping or that we're supporting. So that's kind of the distinction, I guess, that I'm making between these two words, help and support, although it's kind of an arbitrary distinction. But I think what we're talking about is the difference between disempowering or empowering, enabling versus empowering. And the bigger difference that we can make is to empower someone, to support someone in being a fuller, more capable expression of themselves. You know, and when I say capable, what I mean is expressing more of their capacity. And yeah, I think that this is worth looking at, because it enables us then to also, as we're empowering others, to empower ourselves to be able to stay in our lane when it's appropriate, and to give other people the respect of being able to go through what they're going through in order to get to a better place. Yeah, it's challenging to know when is it better to step away, even if you see something that looks like looks like suffering. So I guess that's the invitation into this weekend, as we're at this Friday, is to be present to how we engage with others. Is it from a place of pity, which again is this sort of superiority thing? Is it from a place of pity, or is it from a place of empowerment? So Isabel says, very challenging to me yet. Yeah, it's not an easy question. Thank you for that, Isabel. It's not an easy question. It's challenging. Sometimes you just have to let somebody work it through, even if they're struggling along the way, and trust them and their intelligence and their wholeness. Trust them to find their way, because it's we each have our own struggles, right? So it's hard to know when to jump in and when to step back, right? So with that in mind, I think that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubn. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like and follow the YouTube channel for Enlightened World Network and for me, Mira Rubn, and the links are in the description. And so it's always a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to be exploring life and all of its gifts and conundrums together. So until next time.